The vision of Atascocita is learning is personal, which means we want to build a community of learners that meets the individual needs and passions of the students that we serve. And building community is we want to build a community of students and adults where they're working together. They have shared goals and a shared purpose, primarily of learning, but also of serving the community. You will see students building community not only in their classrooms, but primarily you're going to see it through our Tiger Time Advisory, where they're working together to build learner habits, to work together towards some of these shared goals, to build relationships and friendships. And also something new that we're starting this year is creating a student advisory council to get students involved in solving some of the social issues on our campus. So we want to meet the individual needs of our students. So we're working on strategic use of technology along with contemporary educational practices so that we can vary the pace of the learning for our students. Some students require more time to learn, sometimes require less time. So we want to provide varying times for students to demonstrate their learning. And technology is going to be a big part of that.
So the way we're communicating and showing them how they're learning is what's called standards-based learning. So instead of just approaching math and saying like, oh, here's Unit 1 and here's how you did just on the Unit 1 test, we're actually breaking it down to each individual thing that they're learning about. So if there's 3 concepts or 4 concepts that are being learned in a chapter, or in a unit, they're getting like a quiz on each individual thing, so there's not as much crossover that can lead to some of the confusion. So if we see a test or a quiz grade, it's literally about that one thing. And the way that we do it is what we call our supporting standards. Those are the ones that help them know the overall concept. We quiz them on those first, so we can see before the test comes, like, okay, where are our strengths, where are our weaknesses, so that we can adapt to each individual student's needs for it.
So she divides the test into sections, and then if you don't do well on one section of the test, you go to tutoring, and then also let you retake the test.
We're measuring in my classroom through a color system, and so when students take quizzes or they take summative assessments or they take little brain checks where they're checking their knowledge, they're actually given a color instead of a grade. So if they're given a color like a red, it shows them that they really just don't know the concept very well. If they're given a yellow, they still need to practice some. If they're given green, they're getting pretty good. And if they're blue, they've mastered the concept and they can teach it. So kids aren't so fixated on their percentages. They're more fixated on how can I go from red to yellow and from yellow to green and green to blue.
Ms. Holbert, she puts our levels on a system from blue to green to yellow to red, and blue would be the very you could explain it and help others be that, and then red would be you need some help from other students, and then the green and yellow are you want to improve but you've almost got it.
If you get like a yellow or red, you would probably want to retest that, and you can retest on Google Classroom or you can come in for tutoring. If you check your class average, it shows the average of the grades that she put in. I'll try and have all A's, and if I don't, I'll go in and try and retest something.
I like it when she let us retake the test, because you can get a better grade and break up your grade. It's an opportunity, you can learn something.
So students are assessed in a variety of ways. I like to use exit tickets at the earlier stages of learning. It's a really good indicator if a student knows it, if they can put the information into their own words. Basically the way it works is as a student demonstrates mastery, the gradebook will update with that in a way that is different than traditional gradebook is set up. So at the beginning of the learning cycle, the students may have a practice on a specific concept, and then as we continue learning, as they get further in the learning cycle, they'll do a further demonstrations of understanding with increased rigor, and the older grades roll off, if you will. They become not factored into the average. And so learning is assessed in that way. It helps me target where students are struggling, and so mastery is assessed individually and on a continued basis to where students can take control of their own academic growth.
Based learning, it is different than your traditional way of learning because it's a lot of front-end work on the teacher to kind of think through processes and phases of the learning cycle. Not a learning cycle in a day, but a learning cycle over a course of a month or a month and a half. However, The student is at the helm of their own learning. And so they're involved with the inquiry process, research process, thinking deeply about the material and exploring it to the depth and the breadth of where you can go with that a particular unit. It's a lot of work, but on the back end, what they gain through the process is huge because they really, really begin to learn the material for themselves, and they're at the steering wheel rather than the teacher being at the steering wheel. So as a teacher, I'm now a coach and a facilitator rather than a lecturer.
Students have overall been very positive. I think it definitely has a learning curve because there's a lot more responsibility and time management involved for students. But they're learning these skills as well as the strategies and skills that we need for reading English language arts, which leads to greater improvement later in life for college, high school, and then as well for my classroom, obviously. And these are some soft skills that people don't directly teach necessarily, but you still need to learn. And so I think that's really helped students come a far way in my classroom.
We are currently in a nonfiction unit, and we're given nonfiction books to read. And since I mostly read fiction books, I find reading a nonfiction book a little more challenging and a little more out of my comfort zone. However, I realize that it's necessary to practice and utilize our newly learned skills.
Probably when she's like giving us the creativity and freedom to like write what we want. Like she'll give us a base sentence, but we have to use our own like mind to come up with what we want for like the grade.
What I find challenging in her class is that she encourages us to make things better because I, as a person, I feel like I do my best, but she encourages us to keep on going and to dig deeper and to make things better.
If you were to go to the AMS website under the Information tab and look on Learning is Personal, I have many videos and many articles, books to read, so that anybody interested can learn more about the work that we're doing at Atascocita Middle School.